lahat. This public hearing of the Senate Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality is hereby called to order. Before we go further, let me first acknowledge the presence of Senator Raffy Tulfo. Magandang umaga, Sen. Raffy. And, sir, and then with our two senators present, the chair declares in accordance with our rules the presence of a quorum. This public hearing is being called on Senate Bills number 147 of this representation, 213 of Sen. Tulfo, 237 of Sen. Padilla, 554 of Sen. Pia Cayetano, 719 of Senator Poe, 1198 of Sen. Marcos, 1298 of Sen. Zubiri, and 212 also of Sen. Raffy. We are also considering in this hearing Senate Bill 555 filed also by Sen. Pia. So briefly muli magandang umaga po. Nagtipon tayo ngayon upang gawing makatarungan ang buhay para sa napakaraming pamilyang Pilipino. Marami sa kanila ang pakiramdam para bang nakakulong, nasasakal, hindi mapakali sa loob ng dekadekadang pagkatali sa kanilang mga mapang-abusong asawa. Marami sa kanila gusto lang makalaya mula sa apelyido na ang tanging dala ay masasamang alaala. Mga asawa, babae man o lalaki na walang sustento, missing in action, mapanakit, mapang-api, at hindi tumutupad sa mga sinumpaan nila sa harap ng Diyos. Hindi iyan ang itinuro sa atin ng Diyos. Ang sabi nga ng iba, isang papel na lang ang nag-uugnay sa kanila. Bakit pa ipagkakait sa kanila ang kalayaan at hayaang makakulong sa isang relasyon na mapanakit, walang pagmamahalan at pagpapahalaga sa isa't isa? Lalo't higit para sa mga kabaroko. 1 in every 4 ever-married Filipino women has suffered abuse at the hands of their husbands. Some Filipino women have almost been killed by their own husbands. But most of them cannot leave their marriages because of the prohibitive costs of filing for an annulment. Umaabot minsan ng lampas sa kalahating milyon ang kailangang bayaran para sa prosesong ito. Bukod pa yan sa mental distress dala ng pamamahiya, pagtatalo sa hukuman, pagbabatuhan ng putik ng mga kampo. Napaka-toxic niyan lalo na sa mga bata. Nais ko ring ipaalala po sa lahat ang isang 2018 survey ng SWS na aprobado ng 53% ng mga Pilipino ang diporsyo. This morning, let us give Filipino families the chance, a way out that is straightforward and no fault. Once you've realized you've made a mistake, the way out shouldn't be traumatizing to the average married Filipino, financially, psychologically, and socially. We all deserve a second chance at love and in life. Maraming salamat po. Sen. Raffy, baka nais niyo pong magbigay ng opening remarks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to the Honorable Chairman of this committee, Senator Riza Hontiveros, to my colleagues in attendance, and to those invited as resource persons in this hearing today. Today's matter to be heard is one of, if not the most controversial issue facing our system of family laws. The topic of dissolution of marriage necessarily involves multiple important considerations, such as its effect on the children, if any, and how our system of dissolutions will stand in the face of our country's strong religious convictions. It is often cited that aside from the Vatican, the Philippines is the last remaining country. Again, the Philippines is the last remaining country which does not recognize divorce. Sa katunayan, ang bansang Espanya na nag-convert sa atin sa Kristyanismo ay may sarili ng divorce. At present, our only means of terminating the bonds of marriage during the lifetime of the contracting parties, other than invocation of the lack or defect of formal and essential requisites of marriage, is to our Family Code's Article 36, recognizing psychological incapacity as a ground for annulment. This lack of a divorce law creates a difficult situation for Filipinos. In my experience in public service, prior to my election as a senator, I have seen countless persons stuck in what is a toxic or unproductive marriage. Although the wife or husband suffers day by day by the hand of their spouse, they are left with no choice than to suffer endlessly to the detriment of their physical and psychological well-being. This representation puts forward that it is time to save Filipinos from this dead-end situation by enacting a divorce law that seeks to give substantial grounds for dissolving a marriage apart from psychological incapacity. In drafting the bill for legalizing the dissolution of marriage, I have come across and read through both civil and common law grounds as well as canon law grounds for dissolution of marriage. To my surprise, it would seem as if our laws in the family code is in fact stricter than those found in the laws of the Catholic Church. It is woefully absurd to me that canon law provides for multiple grounds for dissolution of marriage, while our current laws provide for less. In legislating grounds for dissolution of marriage, however, I do not agree that we allow dissolution by mutual consent. I'm a firm believer that for the marriage to be dissolved, there must be a substantial grounds, such as those embodied under our Anti-Violence Against Women and Children Act, or VAUC laws, as it is more commonly known. To allow for mutual consent divorce would indeed reduce the value of marriage as a special contract between two parties and would reduce marriage to a multiple or simple settlement for property relations. For those who are worried that allowing divorce will go against their religious convictions, I find it proper to remind everybody concerned that the existence of a divorce law or other similar law does not present any compulsion to avail of its provisions. Those who have strong belief in the sanctity of marriage can simply choose not to avail of the remedy of dissolution of marriage. It is just unfair for me or to me that those who sorely need such law is prohibited by its application due to conviction of another. Further, to those saying that psychological incapacity in our family code is sufficient should be reminded of the mental acrobatics our courts have to perform in determining the grant or denial of annulment under the grounds. In strong language, I am constrained to state that Article 36 of our family code has already reached a bastardized level of accommodation in order to save persons from what is failing marriage, not to mention the fees involved in engaging legal counsel to dissolve a marriage is not one that all persons can readily afford, and there is no guarantee in its grant on the grounds for psychological incapacity is vague in stating that there is an inability to perform the obligation of a marriage, and such incapacity has existed prior to the celebration of the marriage. All in all, the enactment of a law which legalizes the dissolution of marriage due to acts done within the existence of the marriage is not only poor, but it's also non-invasive to the religious beliefs of other persons. It also gives us a chance to save those who are negatively affected, ills of dysfunctional marriage. I join my colleagues in the Senate who have passed a similar bill and hope that we harmonize all the best provisions in order to give Filipino families a chance to save themselves from endless sufferings. Thank you and good day to all.
Thank you also, Sen. Rafi. So before we start the discussion, let us first acknowledge our resource persons. So may I request our committee secretary to read the names of our resource persons joining us today.
Good morning, everyone. For the record, the committee would like to acknowledge the presence of the following resource person. From the Department of Education, we have Attorney Nathalie Antonio. From the Department of Health, we have Director Gerald Belemac. From the Department of Interior and Local Government, we have Attorney Gino Labarias. From the Department of Justice, we have Attorney Annalisa Efe Manito. Representing for Senate Bill 212, Attorney Norilisa Moranya Manglangit. Then from the National Commission on Muslim Filipinos, we have Attorney Ambayanan Manding, Attorney Dato Shed Omar Idhirani, Attorney Sulaiman M. Tataru. Then for the Philippine Commission on Women, we have Mr. John David S. Salvador. Then for the Commission on Human Rights, we have Ms. Patricia Isabella C. Here, okay. For the Women Legal and Human Rights Bureau, we have Ms. Jillian Paclarin. Then for the Democratic Socialist Women of the Philippines, we have the National Chairperson, Ms. Elizabeth Angshoko. For the Department of Social Welfare and Development, we have ASEC Irene Domlao. Then for the Department of Foreign Affairs, we have Director Bal Simon Roque. Okay. Then for the Alliance for Family Foundation Philippines, Inc., we have Attorney Joel Arzaga. For the Divorce Filipinas Coalition Convener, we have Miss Alpha Joy Alfafara. For the Divorce Filipinas Coalition, together with Miss Alfafara, we have Mr. Paul Rojas. That's all for now, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Comsec. And just for the record, Attorney Noreliza Moranya Manlangit for SBN 212 is also here representing the DOJ. Correct. Thank you, ma'am. Salamat, Comsec. Okay, so the committee is now ready to listen to the prepared position papers, comments, proposals from our invited resource persons. In the interest of time, may the chair request all resource persons to share the highlights of your position papers, and of course, submit, please, the said documents to the committee. So may I first call on our government agencies. For the Department of Justice, Attorney Ite Manito and Attorney Moranya Manlangit, please. So Attorney Ite Manito first.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and to the honorable members of the committee. For Senate Bills number 147, 213, and 237, which seek to give spouses in irremediably failed marriages the opportunity to secure an absolute divorce decree based on the ground mentioned therein, and to grant the divorced spouses the right to remarry. As in previous Congresses, the department maintains its reservation on the passage of a bill granting an absolute divorce. Said general reservations are anchored mainly on the following provisions of the 1987 Constitution, which are Section 12, Article 2, Sections 1 and 2 of Article 15, and Article 1 of EO 209, or the Family Code of the Philippines. Notwithstanding the above position, the department recognizes the plenary power and prerogative of Congress to amend and enact laws, and defers to the wisdom of the legislature on the propriety of enacting the proposed bill. Considering that Senate Bill 147, 213, and 237 pertains to absolute divorce or dissolution of marriage, it is suggested to the committee to come up with a common draft bill that will consolidate these proposed legislative measures. We have, however, specific comments on the said bills, but considering the interest of time, we will submit our position paper embodying those specific comments once our Undersecretary in charge for Legislative Affairs signed that position paper. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you also, Attorney Ite Manito. And the chair wishes to express the committee's appreciation for the department's deferral or deference to the plenary powers of Congress. And in addition to anticipating the specific comments that will be submitted by the department, also looks forward to the department's participation in the technical working group that we will most probably convene so as to indeed come up with that common draft bill. Karaniwan naman ginagawa po talaga namin yon sa mga TWG. And also as far as the committee can to respond to the specific comments of the department. So muli, salamat po, Attorney. So will Attorney Moranya Manlangit also be speaking, ma'am? Particularly for, nakalagay po kayo dito, particularly for Senate Bill 212?
Good morning
Morning.
po, Madam Chair.
All right, you have
With
the floor.
respect to SBN 212, the department generally interposes no legal and constitutional objections to the passage into law of the proposed bill, subject to the submission of our official position paper later on.
Thank you for that, Attorney. So now we'll hear from the DSWD from, is it Yusek Adonis Sulit? Let me double check. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Asek Dumlao, you have the floor, ma'am.
Magandang umaga po, Madam Chairperson. On the part of the Department of Social Welfare and Development, we would like to mention that for Senate Bills 147, 213, 237, 554, 719, 1198, 12, and 1298, the department expresses its full support to the proposed legislative measures. And the department has been consistent with its previous position to support measures that aim to legally end dysfunctional and toxic marriages and regain individuals' dignity and self-worth. All of our comments will be contained in the official paper that will be submitted by the DSWD to your office, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Asek, and also for affirming some of the committee's own values about upholding the dignity and the self-worth of the human person, including every member of the Filipino family. Thank you, Asek. Next, we will hear from the Philippine Commission on Women from, is it Mr. John David Salvador?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir. You have the floor.
Good morning, Madam Chair. The PCW has been strongly advocating for the passage of a bill that will institute divorce in the country. The proposal has been part of the PCW's Women's Priority Legislative Agenda since the 17th Congress. So we fully support the current bills filed since they address the recommendation of the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, or the CEDAW, to the Philippines in its concluding observation number 50 to ensure equality of women and men in marriage, as well as upon the dissolution of marriage, including by expediting adoption of the long-pending divorce bill. We would like to highlight that on PCW, as part of the committee to draft the IRR on SB 147, we welcome the inclusion of the PCW as one of the agencies to be involved in the crafting of the implementing rules and regulation, as well as the task of identifying two representatives from women's organization. We will forward to the committee our comprehensive position paper once finalized for the consideration of the committee and enhancement of the consolidated version of these bills. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you also, Mr. Salvador, pati dun sa alok ninyo na sasama kayo sa pag-draft ng implementing rules and regulations kapag hari nawa na ipasa na itong mga panukalang batas bilang isang batas. Salamat po. Then now we will hear from the Commission on Human Rights from Ms. Patricia Isabella C. You have the floor, ma'am.
Good morning, Madam Chair. The Commission on Human Rights supports the reinstitutionalization of divorce The UDHR, ICCPR, and SIDO all emphasize the equal rights of women and men during marriage and its dissolution. Yet existing legal remedies in the Philippines exposes the vulnerable spouse to greater disadvantage. The Commission is of the belief that the enactment of a divorce law would protect the rights of women, even men, who are currently trapped in dysfunctional and abusive relationships. In line with this, the Commission recommends the filing of a substitute bill that would include provisions which remove qualifiers for repeated and grossly abusive conduct and habitual alcoholism. Additionally, we recommend adopting provisions from the current version of the bill in the House of Representatives, which includes grounds for summary judicial proceedings and exemptions to cooling off period. Madam Chair, our position paper has already been submitted to the committee. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for that, Ms. C, for the submission of the position paper. At sa tulad din pala kanina ni Mr. Salvador ng PCW for highlighting also some very important references for the committee in considering these bills. Yung CEDAW itself, parang isa sa mga Magna Carta ng committee ito. And of course, our international human rights law and treaty obligations. Salamat din dun sa panukala nung pag-file ng substitute bill at yung pag-adopt ng provisions mula sa House version. Totoo nga, tulad nung mga dating Kongreso, nauna na ang House sa Senado sa pag-approve on third and final reading nung kanilang version, and the chair would welcome together with, I think it was the DOJ earlier, kung lalahok din ang CHR sa technical working group para i-finalize yung mga panukalang batas na ito into the final law. Before so salamat muli, Ms. C. The chair would like to acknowledge the arrival of Senator Robin Hood Padilla. Shukran, Sen. Robin, for being here. Tulad po din ni Sen. Rafi na co-author ng dalawa sa mga panukalang batas na kinoconsider natin. Si Sen. Robin din ay isa po nating author. Sen. Robin, baka gusto po ninyong mag-opening statement bago magpatuloy yung presentation ng position papers.
Maraming salamat po sa atin pong ginang na tagapangulo. Isa pong magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. At ako po'y bumabati din sa amin pong idolo, Senator Rafi Tulfo. Magandang umaga po. At sa lahat po ng ating panauhin, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A'udhu billahi minasyaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sa atin pong iginagalang na tagapangulo ng komite, Senator Risa Hontiveros, at ang ating pong mga mahal na kasamaan sa Senado, kung sino man po ang online, at sa atin pong mga resource persons, isa pong umaalab na umaga sa inyong lahat. Isang karangalan po na maging bahagi ng napakahalagang usapin na maaari rin po nating ituring na isa sa pinaka-sensitibong paksa sa kasaysayan ng Kongreso. Sa pagbubukas ng pagdinig patungkol sa diborsyo, ngayong araw na ito, tandaan po natin na hindi na po ito bagong usapin. Matagal na po itong pinagdidebatihan sa Kamara at mismong dito sa Senado. Kaya naman po bilang isa sa mga prioridad na panukala ng inyong lingkod, akin pong inihain ang Senate Bill number 237 o ang Divorce Act of the Philippines. Iisa po tayo sa paninindigan na ang kahalagahan ng pamilya sa ating lipunan ay hindi matatawaran. Malinaw po sa ating saligang batas ang garantiya na pagbibigay proteksyon sa pamilya bilang isang pangunahing institusyong panlipunan. Gayunpaman, napakahalaga pong kilalanin natin na ang mga pamilya ay may iba't ibang anyo, muka at hubog. At lahat ng uri ng pamilya ay nararapat na bigyang proteksyon at suporta. Kabilang na po dito ang mga single-parent households, mga pamilyang may mga anak mula sa adopsyon, at mga blended families na hindi saklaw ng tradisyonal na istruktura ng pamilya sa ating lipunan. Sa kasamaang palad, ang ating mga umiiral na batas ay hindi tumutugon sa masalimuot at komplikadong dinamika ng iba't ibang uri ng pamilya, lalo na ng ilan kung saan ang kasal ay tuluyan ng nawasak at hindi na kailanman mabubuo pa. Sa mga ganitong pagkakataon, ang diborsyo ay hindi banta sa kabanalan ng kasal. Ang diborsyo po ay pagtanggap sa realidad na wala ng anumang uri ng lunas ang kayang humilom sa ilang pagsasamang tuluyan ng nawasak at nasira. Sa gayon, ang legal na proseso sa pagsasawalang bisa ng kasal ang natatanging paraan para mabigyan ng proteksyon ang kapakanan at interes ng mga miyembro ng isang pamilya. Sa mga mag-asawang nakulong sa mga mapang-abuso at hindi ligtas na pagsasama, hindi po ba mahalagang solusyon ang diborsyo bilang legal na tugon para mabigyang proteksyon ang mga miyembro ng pamilya, lalong-lalo na ng mga kabataan? Hindi po ba katanggap-tanggap ang diborsyo para sa isa sa 4 na kababaihan na nakararanas ng pisikal, sexual at emosyonal na pang-aabuso na kanilang katuwang base sa isang survey noong 2017? Maari ito ang dahilan bakit dumarami ang bilang ng mga Pilipino na bukas sa legalisasyon ng diborsyo. Sa katunayan, 53% ng mga Pilipino na nasa hustong gulang ang positibo ang tumugon sa pangangailangan ng diborsyo para sa mga mag-asawang hindi magkasundo base sa isang survey noong 2017. Sa ating mga kababayan, hindi kailanman madali ang desisyon na tuldukan ng kasal. Ngunit said na ang pagmamahal, respeto at suporta sa pagitan ng mag-asawa, legal na proteksyon ng diborsyo ang tanging magsasalba sa esensya ng pamilya. Sa kabuuan, akin pong lubos na nauunawaan na ang paksang ito ay masalimuot at may direktang implikasyon sa lahat ng individual at pamilya. Sa gayon, hiling ko po na mabawat isa ay bukas sa maayos at payapang diskurso. Dapat nating lumiin ang isyong ito ng may empatya, paggalang at kahandaang makinig sa lahat ng boses. Kabilang ang mga may salungat na pananaw, inshallah, tayong lahat ay matuto mula sa makabuluhang dialogo na hahantong sa isang resolusyon na sumasalamin sa ating mga pagpapahalaga bilang isang bansa. Maraming salamat po, mahal na ginang tagapangulo.
Shukran, Sen Robin. And the chair apologizes to Sen Robin for some noise earlier at pinaalala po ang lahat natin na lumalahok sa mga hearing na pakinggang mabuti at wag po ma-distract ang ating pong mga pagsasalita para lubos na gumanda lalo yung ating trabaho. So salamat po sa lahat. So now we will proceed to hear the position on the bills under consideration from the National Commission on Muslim Filipinos, Attorney Ambayanan Manding. You have the floor, ma'am.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Before anything else, I would like to politely stress for the information of this honorable committee that divorce is the only halal or permissible act to do in Quran, but is frowned upon by Allah. Sharia law permits divorce only after exhaustion of all possible means of reconciliation. In other words, it must not be an easy way out in marriage. Nonetheless, this is our position. The NCMF is of the definite impression to respectfully state the following positions. Number 1, the Commission is of the view that divorce should be legalized to protect the overall welfare and well-being of the husband, the wife, and their children who are trapped in failed and abusive marital relationship. Number 2, the Commission firmly supports the successful passage of all the bills related thereto, for it will have a monumental impact and contribution to the Filipino families, regardless of religious identity, considering that we, the Muslims, have practiced divorce via Presidential Decree number 1083, or the Code of Muslim Personal Laws. And finally, the Commission underscores the importance of freedom of marital couples to decide whether to sever their marriage or not. They have the discretion to determine their marital relationship. Madam Chair, Senator Riza, we have already submitted our position paper to the Secretariat. Alaikum salam.
Shukran, Attorney Manding, for the submission of that position paper and also for reminding the whole committee about the existence and the continuing existence and service to the people of the Code of Muslim Personal Laws in our multi-faith, multi-religious national community. So once again, shukran for that. So now we will hear from the Department of the Interior and Local Governments from Attorney Gino Lavarias. Yes, sir, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Senator Tulfo and Senator Padilla. The DILG fully supports the passage of the legislative measure, as this will seek to update the grounds for legal separation and will benefit both parties regardless of gender. And also, the proposals of the legislative measures are in accordance with the Convention on the Elimination of Gender-Based Violence. And some comments of the DILG will be better addressed in a TWG. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Attorney, and for citing another one of our treaty obligations in terms of responding to gender issues and concerns of our country. Salamat po. And now we'll hear from the Department of Foreign Affairs, Director Val Simon or Simon Roque. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning sa lahat. Good morning, Senator Tulfo and Senator Padilla. Our input at the DFA is really more operational because Philippine embassies and consulates abroad act as sort of the local civil registry abroad for marriages of Filipinos, births of Filipinos, and deaths of Filipinos abroad. So allow me to read our input. In amendments to the Family Code pertaining to divorce, annulment, and legal separation, the general input of the Department of Foreign Affairs is the centralization of the process of annotating the marriage certificates that are the subject of these termination of marriage proceedings. Centralization means having the Office of the Civil Registrar General directly undertake the annotation, which will be an improvement consistent with the anti-red tape law and digitalization initiatives over the costly and time-consuming process of having them annotated by local civil registries around the country and Philippine embassies and consulates abroad. A process that also concludes at the OCRG. So those are our general inputs, more operational, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Director Roque. Operational man, mahalaga pa rin para sa gobyerno natin in serving our constituents, our nationals, dito man po sa sariling bayan natin o sa iba't ibang mga bansa. So salamat po para sa input ng department. Then now we will hear from the Department of Education, Attorney Nathalie Antonio. You have the floor, ma'am.
Good morning, Madam Chair and the honorable members of the Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality. We thank you for inviting the department to be here today. Please note that given that the mandate of the department does not touch upon the matters of the bills discussed here today, our attendance was intended for observation and compliance purposes only. We are currently in coordination with the other strands of the department for consultation for our inputs, if any, for our position paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Antonio, na bagamat yung department nasa konsultasyon pa rin, pero pinaunlakan nyo yung imbitasyon ng komite, and we do appreciate that. And would appreciate kung may mga insights kayo moving forward habang ipinapasa harinawa, no, yung mga panukalang batas into law, yung tingin po ng departamento na posibleng impact nito sa ating mga estudyante, yung mga anak ng mga pamilyang pinag-uusapan natin. So, salamat, Attorney.
Yes po, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. And from the Department of Health, Director Gerard Bellimac. You have the floor, sir.
Magandang umaga po, Madam Chair. The Department of Health recognizes that divorce is a sensitive and complex issue that can have a profound impact on the health and well-being of women, children, and families, and that they vary widely depending on individual circumstances. As an advocate for women, child, and family welfare, the DOH believes that any decision regarding divorce should be made by individuals with careful consideration of the risks and benefits involving the family and its relationships. It is worth noting that the Philippines has already set a precedent for protecting the welfare of women and children through the passage of the Solo Parents Welfare Act of 2020 and the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act of 2004. The DOH supports continuation and expansion of these initiatives to ensure that the welfare of women and children continues to be protected during and after the divorce process. The DOH also recognizes that divorce is life-changing event that signifies the end of a marriage, triggers a series of emotional and psychological challenges that causes stress, life with frustration, emptiness, and despair that affects both partners and as well as their children. It can have both negative and positive effects on mental health. For example, it can cause depression and anxiety, lower self-esteem, sleep disturbances, and substance abuse. Should divorce become legal, the Department of Health strongly believes that it is the responsibility of the parents, as stated in the Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health Law, to ensure that the welfare of their children. This includes the development of a parental plan that takes into account the child's inputs and ensures that the child is protected from neglect and ensures their developmental growth. It is crucial that the parental plan establishes clear and specific guidelines for child custody, visitation, and child support to ensure that the welfare of the children is protected. This should also include provisions for adequate support for child nutrition, education, medical care, counseling, and other essential needs for the well-being of the child. The Department of Health provides specific recommendations to the respectable committee and Madam Chair. First is development of health intervention package designed to help women and children cope with the stress of divorce. Second, development of research studies on evidence-based interventions for children and adolescents who have experienced divorce. And third is access to healthcare and medical treatment is essential for individuals and families going through a divorce process. Universal healthcare sets the direction of the health sector in enabling healthcare access for all Filipinos, matching them with a primary care provider who will help navigate patients in the healthcare provider network, and providing continued financial coverage with the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation. And should divorce be available to all families, regardless of income status, the government should provide financial, psychological, and medical support during the transition period and after the divorce is being finalized. In conclusion, Madam Chair, while divorce is a personal choice that should be carefully weighed, the Department of Health is committed to ensuring the health and well-being of women and children and their families, and will continue to advocate for resources and support for those going through the divorce process. We shall be submitting the position paper as soon as we can finalize the document, Madam Chair. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat din po, Director Bellimac, also for pointing out kung papaano nag-interact itong mga panukalang batas namin sa ngayon, mag-interact yung posibleng bagong batas na ito sa mga existing na mga batas na natin, even in the health sphere itself and the social protection sphere. Yung sa solo parents, yung, of course, yung anti-vowsy, yung reproductive health and responsible parenthood, yung universal healthcare, at yung pag-point out din po ninyo kung paano in considering these bills, nasa policy environment din, pati yung mga pillars ng UHC system tulad ng PhilHealth. Of course, ang perspective po ng komite sa ngayon ay mas dun sa positive effects ng providing for dissolution of marriage or divorce. But maraming salamat dun sa mga mungkahi at paalala ninyo in terms of the whole, in a way, universal health package na dapat continuously available for families, couples, families, children, even as they may go through the divorce process. And what the committee, in considering the bills, thinks will be a better family life for each one of them. So maraming salamat po sa department. And last but certainly not the least, para sa ating mga government agencies, mula naman sa Council for the Welfare of Children, Attorney Rafael Ricalde. You have the floor, sir.
Hi, good morning, Madam Chairperson Hontiveros and members of the committee. The CWC firmly believes that a child shall fully develop and mature to his or her full potential through a good foundation, which starts with the family. The responsibility of rearing and developing children shall always be first and foremost borne by fathers and mothers. However, as continued changes in times affects our society, unavoidable and unforeseeable situations pose a threat in the family home. As such, there is somehow the need to accept that a once loving and caring environment ceases to be one. All family members are always affected by this. Hence, not only should the marital relations be prioritized, but more importantly, the best interests of the child, since children appear to be the most prejudiced in an unhealthy family relationship. The CWC fully supports the Senate bills being discussed here today as an avenue for unhealthy marriages to be terminated. And Madam Chairperson, we have already submitted our position paper regarding the matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much also, Attorney Ricalde, for submitting the paper and presenting its highlights now. Salamat po. So now we will move to hear our resource persons from the non-governmental organizations. Unang-una na po mula sa Divorce Coalition Pilipinas, Ms. Alpa Joy Alfafara. And then after her, Mr. Paul Rojas, if you will be making a separate presentation. Yes, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you. Greetings to all of you, to all the staff of the committee, resource speakers, and to the authors of different divorce bills this 19th Congress. To Senator Risa, Senator Robin, and Senator Rafi, thank you for having a heart for the Filipino people. And magandang buhay. On behalf of our fellow advocates and especially the stakeholders of divorce, we are grateful for this opportunity to be heard. We would like to declare our most sincere support for divorce bill filed in the Senate, which are Senate bills numbers 147, 213, and 237, as it reflects the considerations from the previous Congress terms, including the very first hearing we had in the Senate last September 17th of 2019. Thank you, ma'am. And basically what we had been lobbying for. Our members are ordinary people, or Filipinos, and we stand at an aggregate of 80,000 Filipinos locally and abroad. We are at the grassroots from every district, cities, and barangays. There are those who support our advocacy even if they do not need it. Some have supported the divorce bills since 2011. So the Divorce Filipinas Coalition with the Filipino Advocates for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, we are now SEC registered as Filipino Families for Resilience and Sustainability. I would like to state the express support of the National Council for Solo Parents and Q Asia as well. Since the 17th Congress as a coalition, we have been lobbying for the passage of the divorce law in the Philippines to end the disrespect to the Sharia law that were available of the non-Muslim community to free themselves, to end the social and economic injustice to Filipinos affected as a result of not having a divorce in the country. So to all our civil servants and lawmakers, this bill would be an act of compassion and emancipation from a religious imposition. So this month of April, third week and third Saturday, April 15th, we have just celebrated Solo Parents Day nationwide as per the RA 11861. And thank you, Madam Chair, once again for this. As of the 2018 census, it was also reported that there are currently an estimated to to 15 million solo parents in the Philippines, 95% of whom are women, according to a World Health Organization funded study by the DOH and the University of the Philippines, National Institutes of Health. Most of these solo parents were either abandoned, separated in fact, and or mentally, economically, and physically abused. What kind of a Filipino we really want to be is what we would like to ask. What kind of Philippines do we want our children to grow into? Apathetic or compassionate? Be ignorant of the plight of your fellow Filipinos whose voices are weak, or help them give a second chance and respect our human rights. We would want our fellow Filipinos to be successful, to progress in life and be happy. Wala na po sanang crab mentality sa buhay ng ibang tao. We can help them by giving liberty to have a second chance to live their lives in peace, being able to move on legally with stability, not chain them. Please stop the discrimination through these laws. Respect our right to have justice and freedom to legally move on. Freedom for all, not just a Sharia for few. We ask you to reinstitute divorce in the Philippines, at least for the non-Catholic members who had been separated for a long time, abandoned and or abused. This will bring economic empowerment for us, especially for the women, as there will be no more legal ties, especially with our maiden names, and no more uncertainties. This will also lead to having peace of mind to plan for the future, such as being totally free to be an entrepreneur, growing our own business, or to be gainfully employed, and even plan for retirement without having to worry anymore. And hindi na po kami magiging biktima ng mga mapang-abuso or who will take or will dictate our lives, right? Na abusuhin ang aming pagiging solo parents. Kami po ay umaasang matutuldukan na ang aming paghihintay, paghihirap ng aming mga saloobin at maipasa na rin ito ngayong Congress. Mahal po namin ang Pilipinas. Mahal namin ang aming mga anak. Pinalalaki pa rin namin sila ng may tiwala sa ating gobyerno, may pagmamahal sa pamilya, sa kapwa, sa Diyos at sa ating bansa. Despite our current status in life, political affiliation, religious beliefs, we are all Filipinos. Let him hear who has an ear. Let him feel who has a heart. We kindly ask you to act on our call. Laws and policies should work for everyone, regardless of tribes, religion, and statuses. Patas na batas para sa lahat. Please reinstitute divorce. Thank you po. Shukran.
Maraming salamat, Ms. Alpa Joy. And mabuhay kayo. The committee hears you with our hearts. Sir Paul, will you be making a separate presentation?
Just a recap.
Yes, sir.
Siguro.
You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Senator Hontiveros. A pleasant morning to you and Senator Idol Rafi Tulfo and Senator Robin Padilla, the honorable guests and representatives, as well as resource persons. We thank you for the invitation. We're in full support of the bills on divorce because children may now be protected. There will be a cessation of undue mental health issues. People can now heal finally and become productive and creative once again. The divorce is essentially a human right, which has been denied us since 1949. In line with the spirit of anti-bullying, this divorce act will be just right for this. It is also cognizant of the dichotomy in nature, that is good versus bad spouse or parent. And for those who had petitioned under EO 209 but were denied for some reason, the net effect is actually worse than punishment for a very serious crime. Those who had been meted a capital punishment are at least assured that after 30 years, they will have freedom. But under our current law, the denial for separation, legal and permanent, is unfortunately denied as well. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much also, Sir Paul. Sa inyo po, sa pasensya nyo sa Senado na 4 years after we first held our hearing, bumalik po kayo. Salamat po ng marami para doon. And now let's hear from the Women's Legal Bureau, Ms. Jelen Paclarin.
Magandang umaga, Madam Chair, Senator Risa Hontiveros, Senator Tulfo, and Senator Padilla. The Women's Legal and Human Rights Bureau welcomed the initiatives of the honorable senators in reinstituting divorce in the Philippines, particularly Senate Bills 147, 213, and 237. National laws have entrenched the permanent nature of marriage in the Philippines through various acts, court rulings, and decrees. However, the concept of divorce is not new. Divorce was practiced in pre-colonial Philippine communities. So let me just give you a brief background. Spanish colonization and imposition of Christianity prohibited divorce and allowed only legal separation. During the American period, divorce was allowed under Act number 2710, which was passed on March 11, 1917 by our legislatures. During the Japanese occupation, a new divorce law, Executive Order number 141, was promulgated. This law gave 9 grounds for divorce in addition to adultery and concubinage. Executive Order number 141 was repealed with the establishment of the Commonwealth government under the Americans in 1944, and Act number 2710 was revived 6 years later on August 30, 1950. So the Civil Code of the Philippines took effect, repealing Act number 2710 and providing only for legal separation. So the Family Code, which became effective on August 3, 1988, replaced the provisions of the Civil Code on marriage and family. So under the Family Code, non-Muslim couples may only avail of 3 remedies to change the status of their marriage: legal separation, declaration of nullity, and annulment. Unfortunately, the present laws relating to separation of couples and termination of marriage are inadequate to respond to the myriad causes of failed marriages. So if I will be allowed, I will just enumerate now some of these challenges. And why do we need to reinstitute divorce in the Philippines? Number one, the absence of standards in relation to Article 136, Article 36 of the Family Code. Article 36 provides a remedy only for spouses who can prove psychological incapacity. The concept certainly cannot accommodate all cases where divorce would have been necessary. For some time, there were no clear standards in the termination of psychological incapacity by trial courts. We have the Molina Doctrine, which laid out stringent requirements that psychological incapacity must be medically identified and proven to exist at the time of the celebration of the marriage. And it must be so grave that marital obligations will not be fulfilled. This is one of the bottlenecks of those wanting to annul their marriage. Of course, we have the case Tan Andal versus Andal, where one of the associate justice, Marvic Leonen, defines psychological incapacity as not a medical but a legal concept. So the new ruling defines psychological incapacity as a personal condition that prevents a spouse to comply with fundamental marital obligations only in relation to a specific partner that may exist at the time of marriage, but may have revealed to behaviors subsequent to the ceremonies. So what we're trying to say is we have, yes, Article 36, but still it's very difficult for those who wanting to annul their marriage. Number two, another reason, various reasons why people want divorce. Uncertainties about marrying. Some were forced to get married because they were pregnant and eventually decided that they don't want to stay with that person. Or incompatibility. They were compatible when they were used to be in a heterosexual relationship, but eventually realized that they were not compatible. Role expectations. Lack awareness of their rights. I think this has been raised a couple of times in relation to physical violence. And this is based on WLB's research, which we did in 2008, which we think are still relevant until nowadays. Number three, we are receiving a lot of inquiries, Madam Chair, from our friends and colleagues from the migrant workers. No? So they were actually asking us, when are we going to pass the divorce law? So let me just highlight now some points are raised by the migrant worker sector. They wanted to facilitate access to remedy of migrant workers. Number one, migrant workers trapped in an abusive relationship and opted to work as OFW and met a responsible person while working. So what are they going to do? Number two, or spouses threatened by long separation due to migrant work or immigration and wanting to have a family of their own. Number three, I think this was highlighted in SB 554 of Senator Pia Cayetano. The marriage migrants married to foreigners and husband able to move on, no, because divorce is allowed. This is common to Filipinas married to Japanese and Koreans. No, we did a research before, and some of their husbands have moved on, but they were not able to move on because the judicial recognition in the Philippines is like following the legal process of annulment. So what we're trying to say is the new divorce bills provide a welcome addition to the legal remedies available to spouses in marriages that need dissolution. Any divorce law should make the process less costly, less consuming, and less acrimonious. It should also ensure the protection and safeguarding of the rights of women, especially the best interest of the rights of children. The divorce law should aim at reducing the trauma and the fault finding of parties, which is what's happening right now. No? One expert even mentioned that a marriage which is irretrievably broken must be given a decent burial to give the spouses the opportunity to move on with their lives. The absence of a divorce law will not keep together coupled in failed marriages. Yet, the absence of divorce creates more problem than necessary for many couples as well as their family members. So when a marriage is no longer viable, divorce should be an option. We support our legislators in reinstating divorce in the Philippines. As mentioned earlier, it used to be a legal option, a remedy before. We thank the committee for inviting us, and any additional support you need from us, we are very much welcome to be part of future processes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much also, Ms. Jelen, also for reminding the committee that kapag harinawa na ipasa itong mga panukalang batas bilang batas, hindi pala ito mag-institute pero magre-reinstate. Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's hear now from the Democratic Socialist Women of the Philippines, Ms. Elizabeth Angsioco. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Chair Risa, committee members and authors of the other bills on divorce, other resource persons and guests. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this meeting and hopefully will lead to the reinstitution of divorce in the country. Many Filipinos have been waiting for this to happen. The Democratic Socialist Women of the Philippines, as a national federation of more than 250 community-based women's organizations, has been advocating for the reinstitution of divorce since the first ever bill was filed many Congresses ago. In a recent national conference on the women's advocacy agenda, participated in by leaders of community-based women's groups in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, the passage of a pro-women, rights-based, accessible, and expeditious divorce law in the country again took the top spot in our advocacy priorities. We appreciate the recognition of most of the bills that divorce is primarily a women's rights issue. Through the decades of our work, we have seen countless poor women miserably trapped in abusive and violent marriages with no legal recourse out and begin their lives anew. The DSWP support for the divorce bill's passage significantly emanates from the sad experiences of these women. Divorce is also a class issue. Poor women are left without options, but we surprisingly see rich personalities able to expedite the annulment of their marriages in a fairly short time, only because they have the money and other resources needed for this. In contrast, many couples in poor communities whose marriages are already beyond repair just separate without going through any legal process. For women survivors of abuse and violence, this is problematic because they remain married in the eyes of the law. We know of some who, despite separating from their husbands, continued to be abused because for the husbands, the women still, quote unquote, belong to them. For these women and many others, it is not a matter of getting out of one marriage and jumping to another. Divorce may be the only chance they have to totally break free from abuse. It is their escape to restart their lives and chart their future. The state is duty-bound to protect the rights of these women and help empower them to live the life that they want and deserve as human beings. As already said many times, divorce is for failed marriages, those that have lost the very foundation of happy marriages, love, trust, and respect, and replaced by endless conflicts that many include abuse and violence. Madam Chair, we have very specific comments on the bills. May I just run through some of them? One, on the grounds for divorce, we agree that the existing grounds for legal separation and annulment of marriage be made as grounds for divorce with the amendments contained in SB 147 of Senator Risa pertaining to homosexuality and lesbianism and physical violence or grossly abusive conduct. We propose the addition of the following as ground for divorce. One, other forms of domestic or marital abuse, including psychological and emotional violence, sexual violence, and economic abuse, provided that the grant of absolute divorce based on domestic marital abuse or violation of RA 9262 or the anti-vowsy law shall be without prejudice to the prosecution of the errant spouse under the said act. In addition to physical abuse, we hope that other forms of abuse can also be considered as a ground for divorce. Another recommendation is the civil recognition of a valid foreign divorce and also the recognition of valid canonical or church divorce or dissolution or declaration of nullity of marriage by a church. This means that in effect, the DSWP recommends the integration of the essence of SBs 554 and 1298 on valid foreign divorces and church annulment of marriages into this bill. We also recommend additional provisions on overseas Filipino workers, as already mentioned by my sister Jelen. And we also recommend summary judicial proceedings for some of the the grounds, also similar with what they have in the draft committee report of the House of Representatives divorce bill. We also recommend the waiver of expert testimony because this becomes a reason why annulment cases, for example, take very long and become very expensive. We hope to cure this problem when it comes to the divorce law. We want to see, hopefully, a provision on award for damages that will help, especially women abused, survivors of abuse and violence, that will help them have the chance to start anew. And also the conversion of pending petitions for annulment and also for legal separation. We hope that there would be a provision whereby this can be converted into a divorce petition if the petitioners so desire. Other recommendations are actually, we do not recommend having a prescription period, Madam Chair, and we know that in your bill there is no prescription period because of the fact that so many separated couples for so many years have been waiting for this bill to pass. However, if there should be a prescription period, we have a formulation that we would want to recommend and submit to the committee. In conclusion, Madam Chair and Senators, the DSWP proposes the immediate consolidation and harmonization of the various bills with the recommendations forwarded by the various groups. What we all want is a progressive and rights-based law reinstituting divorce in the country. We hope to participate in the future processes, including the TWG, and until the Senate debates, because we want to see this bill become a law. Hopefully, the needs of those who have survived violence and abuse can be addressed by a divorce law. Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the committee.
Thank you very much also, Ms. Beth. Pati dun sa alok ninyo na sumali sa TWG din hanggang pa sa mga debate. And also for reminding the committee that considering dissolution of marriage or divorce bills also has that class aspect. So sa sitwasyon ngayon at saka sa provisions na dapat magkaroon yung batas kapag naisabatas natin itong mga panukala. So salamat muli. Now let's hear from Alfie, Alliance. Please. Yes, Alliance for Family Foundation Philippines, Inc. Vice President, Attorney Joel Arzaga. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Your Honor, and to our honorable senators. I'm Attorney Joel Arzaga from the Alliance for the Family Foundation Philippines, Incorporated, or ALFI, and we are grateful for this opportunity to address this honorable committee in its consideration of the divorce bills. ALFI respectfully expresses its opposition to the proposed divorce bills, as the bills will redefine marriage by eliminating its permanent and inviolable character. It is our position that the bills are contrary to the constitutional mandate to strengthen and protect the family as a basic autonomous social institution and marriage as an inviolable social institution. The constitutional framers' choice of the word inviolable is significant. Inviolable means never to be broken, infringed, or dishonored. This points to the permanence of marriage as considered by the Filipino people as an inherent character of marriage since time immemorial. The Supreme Court in Navales versus Navales also speaks of this permanence, stating that the Constitution decrees marriage as legally inviolable and protects it from the dissolution at the whim of the parties. This permanence is likewise reflected in our family code, which recognized marriage as a special contract of permanent union between a man and a woman entered into for the establishment of conjugal and family life. Harmonizing the Constitution, laws, and jurisprudence, it is clear that the Philippines values the sanctity of marriage, its inviolability, permanence, and stability, which must be protected and preserved by the state. And these are precisely threatened and jeopardized by the mere presence of a divorce. We need only to look at the experience of other countries where divorce is legal. In the United States, for example, the numbers show an alarmingly high rate of divorce of 42 to 45%. This rises to 60% for second marriages and 73% for third marriages. And this could very well happen here in our country, especially with the introduction of the ground of irreconcilable differences and the mandate for summary judicial proceedings for certain grounds in obtaining a divorce. The ease with which divorce may be obtained will be destructive to the inviolability and permanence of marriage and will ultimately damage the family. This especially given the complications brought by a divorce, co-parenting, custody battles, divided assets, expensive and harassing court proceedings, lack of security for children, and the destruction of the children's relationship with their parents. To this point, Your Honors, studies have shown that those who suffer the most in a divorce are the children. Children who experience a divorce of their parents are likely to suffer adverse effects on their academic performance, physical and mental health, with an increased possibility to be exposed to drug, alcohol, and even sexual abuse. For example, on the effect of divorce on family relations, only 17% of children of divorce maintain frequent contact with the non-custodial parent, with 65% of 18 to 22-year-olds from divorced families describe their relationships with their fathers as poor. On the effect of divorce on academic performance, 25% of 18 to 22-year-olds from divorced families drop out of school. On the effect of divorce on health, 40% of 18 to 22-year-olds from divorced families required psychological help. And this manifests even when they become adults, as they would exhibit a significantly higher risk for depression. We have resources, Your Honor, which we have referenced in our position paper submitted to this committee. Finally, Your Honor, marriage is a commitment that the state must uphold as permanent because the welfare of the children and the stability of the Filipino family and of Philippine society depend on such commitment. And spouses should be given all state support to ensure that they are able to work on their marriage and preserve the commitment they made. And this includes precluding any possibility of dissolving their union. We urge this honorable committee and this august body to preserve and protect the sanctity of marriage and family life by rejecting the legislations that would introduce divorce in our country. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you to Attorney Arzaga. Even as the committee continues to consider the bills and hopefully moves forward into the technical working group and then the plenary interpellation and amendments, the chair thanks the good attorney for the data about the experiences of other countries which have divorce law so that we can subject these to further study. Causality or non-causality with the availability of divorce law or divorce process, and how to, together with the inputs from the Department of Health earlier, how to provide for responses or preemptive measures to continue to take care of the overall health and well-being, rights and welfare of every member of the family. So salamat pong muli, attorney. And then, so now, last and certainly not the least from our NGOs, Mr. Romeo Dongueto from the Child Rights Network. You have the floor, sir.
Maraming salamat po, Madam Chair, and good morning to our dear senators, members of the committee. The Child Rights Network and its convener, the Philippine Legislators Committee on Population and Development, express our full support for the bills instituting divorce and expanding the grounds of legal separation in the Philippines. Divorce will provide protection to children and exposure to domestic violence under an abusive marital relationship. It will support children's well-being and development by preventing and excluding the child from witnessing and experiencing the degradation of love and respect of their parents' relationship. Marami pong pag-aaral ang nag-uugnay sa pananakit, pambubugbog at pagdaraha sa mga bata sa isang relasyong nasira na sa pagitan ng mag-asawa. Our support for the measures is based on the following points, Madam Chair. Sandali lamang po. In separation between former spouses, a divorce procedure will see through the best interest as well as the rights of children, particularly in terms of child support and custody, especially in cases where any form of abuse is the ground for the divorce. Moreover, Senate Bills number 1198 and 719 omit the need for the severity of physical violence and abusive conduct directed against common child or the child of the petitioner, for it is to be considered as grounds for illegal separation. Recognizing the rights and best interests of not just the common children, but of all legitimated and adopted children, Senate Bill number 147 acknowledges the retirement of the legal status and legitimacy of the children of divorced parents. The Child Rights Network also wishes to appeal to the committee to add the following provisions on the bills. Social protection and assistance, especially in the child support and custody process for children whose parents have undergone the divorce process. Inclusion of the stigmatization of divorce annulment, and separation in existing programs and initiatives, as well as the prohibition of discrimination against children who have been part of such process. Lastly, Madam Chair, mandate for government, particularly the DSWD, Department of Education, CHED, Department of Health, PCW, to study the social and psychological consequences of divorce and develop appropriate programs to help children cope with these consequences. Maraming salamat po, Madam Chair.
Maraming salamat po, Sir Rom, also for that last recommendation that ties up some of the inputs of our earlier resource persons mula sa DepEd, sa DOH, even sa ALFI. So salamat po. Unless we have additional resource persons, matanong ko yung aking dear colleague, Sen. Rafi, at pagbalik ni Sen. Robin kung merong gustong itanong sa ating mga resource persons.
Salamat, Madam Chair. As a matter of fact, mas maganda siguro next time mag-invite tayo ng mga grupo na oppose sa divorce para magkaroon tayo ng healthy debate dito. So far nakita ko isa lang nag-oppose dito, si Attorney Arzaga. And I have just a couple of questions for you, Attorney. Halimbawa po, meron kang kamag-anak at yung kamag-anak mo ay mahirap. Babae po yung kamag-anak nyo. And araw-araw siya po ay nakakaranas ng pambubugbog sa kanyang mister. On top of that, yung mister niya po ay addict at wala nang pag-asa na marehab. Kailangan niya po magparehab. And day in and day out, nakikita po ng mga anak, ng inyong kamag-anak, na yung ginagawang pambubugbog sa kanilang ina. Now, mahirap ang po yung kamag-anak nyo. At ayaw na po talaga ng kamag-anak ninyo na makisama doon sa kanyang mister na sobrang pagkaabusado. There's no way that the marriage will still work. So dumating yung time, lumayas na lang po yung inyong kamag-anak. Lumayo na lang. And then, after a couple of years, etong si abusive na husband, binalikan si kamag-anak mo. Dahil si kamag-anak mo ay meron ng trabaho at hino-hostage. Kailangan magbigay ka. Dahil kapag hindi, ididemanda kita kasi meron ka na ngayong boyfriend. Ididemanda kita kasi meron ka ng ibang boyfriend at kasal pa rin tayo. Ano po ang inyong reaksyon sa sitwasyon na yun? Hindi ba, dadagdagan ko, hindi ba it's about time na para mabigyan ng pagkakataon yung kamag-anak niyo na makapag-file ng divorce? Kasi kapag hindi, pag annulment ang pag-uusapan, wala akong kakayahan ng kamag-anak niyo because annulment is a long process and it's anti-poor. Go ahead po.
Maraming salamat po, Senator Tulfo, sa inyong katanungan. Una-una po, kami po sa ALFI, we commiserate with everyone, with women who find themselves in abusive situations like the one you described, sir. For us po, we would like to exhaust all existing remedies that women who find themselves in abusive relationships may avail of. For example, if the root of the problem is violence, we have the provisions of the VAUSI, Violence Against Women.
No, sir, I'm sorry, excuse me. Ang sinasabi ko na nga po, naghiwalay na. Wala na nga hong paan na mapag-ayos pa sila kaya naghiwalay na po yung si Mrs. Okay, at hindi na po pwede ma-rehab itong si addict na mister. Ano pong reaksyon nyo? Kasi ang sinasabi niyo, nag-offer kayo ng option.
Yes, sir.
Okay, remedies. Wala na nga pong remedy. Unreconcilable differences na nga po. Hindi na sila pwede ma-reconcile dahil nga po itong si lalaki sobrang pagka-abusive na.
Yes, sir.
So ano pong reaksyon nyo?
Sa amin naman po, sir, sa mga ganong pagkakataon po, maaaring yung asawang lalaki ay talagang psychologically incapacitated po na pumasok doon sa kasal at maaari po nating ipa-deklara ito sa hukuman na kung saan sasabihin ng ating husgado na sa simula pa lamang po dahil sa pagkukulang ng pagkaintindi ng asawang lalaki sa mga responsibilidad ng isang kasal ay wala hong kasal na naganap.
Then, I'll give you a situation na ito po ay nangyari na po sa aking programa. So magpa-file si babae ng annulment against lalaki. Now, sasabihin ngayon ni lalaki, sino sa atin may sira sa ulo? Siyempre sabihin ni lalaki, hindi ako papayag kasi gusto ko kasal pa rin tayo dahil pinapakinabangan kita. at lalapit sila sa isang psychologist to prove na something's wrong with the marriage because one of them is psychologically incapacitated. There are times na kailangan pa magsinungaling ng psychologist para palitawin na may problema sa pag-iisip ang isa sa kanila at sino ituturo. Siyempre, magtuturuan, walang gustong umamin. Di po ba? It's very easy for you to say na annulment because you can afford. How about those people that who cannot afford? How about the poor people? Ikaw, meron attorney ka, kayang-kaya mo magbayad ng kalahating milyon. Of course, at your disposal, meron ka mga kotse, properties, alahas, money in the bank. You have those, I think. Pero how about those people na halos hirap pa sila maitawid pang araw-araw yung kanilang mga pangailangan, wala nang halos makain. Paano yun?
Yes, respectfully,
Kasi
sir.
madaling magsambit ng annulment
Yes,
because
sir.
kaya mo. Paano dun sa mga taong hindi nila kaya?
Yes, sir. With that, sir, I think it becomes incumbent upon the state to make adequate legal assistance available to any person, sir, especially for those who find themselves in such situation and have determined that perhaps the marriage really is infirmed because of the psychological incapacity.
Legal assistance?
Yes, sir. If it's
Okay.
possible, sir,
Uh,
to be provided by the state, sir.
a lot of people that came to me to ask for help, they asked for legal assistance but it didn't work. Kasi nga po, mahal nga po, kailangan pa ng mga eksperto. Kailangan po yung mga legal expert, psychologist, and all. And the government cannot just afford that to the people that needs yung maka-avail nitong annulment.
Yes, sir. In that case,
Sinabi
sir,
ko nga sa'yo kanina, kalahating milyon po ang pinakamura ngayon para sa isang annulment para mapabilis yung process na. Mabilis meaning 2 years.
yes, sir. I think, sir, the state, the Congress, the Senate is not precluded from introducing legislation that would make fees for annulment affordable for individuals who are in need of it. And I think also, sir, this could be a multi-sectoral endeavor to help legal assistance available.
Bakit nila mag-introduce ng legislation para magkaroon ng divorce kaysa pa magpahanap ka ng pasikot-sikot? Kumbaga talagang ginagawa mo ng paraan yung isang baluktot na sistema.
Yes,
Yung
sir.
sistema na bulok na baluktot na mahirap kumbaga sa karpintero, hirap na magawa ng paraan ng karpintero kasi inaanay na, marupok na yung pundasyon. Pilit mo pa rin talagang ipa-reconstruct, pilit mo pa talagang ba't di mo na lang tanggalin na lang ulit yan at magtayo ka ng bago, which is the divorce I'm offering.
Yes, sir.
Di ba? I-overhaul na lang yon. Kasi really, Attorney Arzaga,
Yes, sir.
take it from me. I've been in public service of broadcast for 20 years, more than 20 years. Every single day nakikita ko po yung mga mahirap na kababayan lumalapit sa akin na nagsusumbong dahil sila binubugbog, minamaltrato, winawalang yan ng kanilang mister. Yung mga anak pupunta sa akin, nagmamakaawa dahil yung kanilang tatay, abusado, nakikita binubugbog yung kanilang nanay day in and day out. Napakadali sa iyo, attorney, magsalita sapagkat hindi ka nananas ng ganon. Salamat ka dahil mayaman ka. Hindi mangyari sa iyo siguro yun. O sa iyong parents, never mo na makita yun. Ano yung mga mahirap na kababayan? One day siguro I'll invite you to attend one of my shows, or maybe siguro I'll let you sit doon sa Action Center para ma-feel mo face to face. Mahirap kasi kung ano lang nababasa mo, kung ano lang nakikita mo sa Constitution, sige, okay na, I will adapt this. As a lawyer, of course, I don't blame you kasi you're a lawyer. Kung ano yung nasa Constitution, kung ano yung nasa batas, talagang you'll stick to it. But there are times na you have to relate to the people doon po sa ground. Diba? Yun nakikita mo talaga yung pinaka-problema. Dapat na-feel mo sila like me, face to face, I see them so I can feel them every day. Di po ba?
Yes,
Kasi
sir.
maging po yung Constitution sometimes kailang baguhin na po kasi hindi na lang papanahon. So you've been mentioning a while ago tungkol sa mga batas. Kasi nasa batas yan. Yung binanggit niyo pa permanent union na must be upheld by the state. Marami tayong mga batas po na naamyendahan na. May mga batas pa tayo na kinangalang ambyendahan pa dahil hindi na po napapanahon. Naintindihan niyo po yun, ano? You're a lawyer.
Yes, sir.
So this time, ito po yung sinasabing batas natin, dapat mamyandahan na magkaroon na po talaga ng divorce. Di ba, sir? And then another thing also, tayo na lang po ang batas bukod sa Vatican ang walang divorce law. Buti nga po, hindi nyo binanggit yung na ikaw ay galing sa religious group. Dahil sabihin ko sa inyo, yung nag-introduce ng Christianity sa atin dito, yung Spain, may sariling divorce law na. Diba? Attorney, yun lang po.
Thank you po very much, Senator Tulfo.
Salamat po, Sen Rafi. And the chair also appreciates yung punto ni Sen Rafi kanina about having more resource persons na opposed sa bills. And for the record lang po, in fact, I was expecting at least 2 more. Mr. Jesse Garcia, chairperson ng United Church of Christ in the Philippines, pero nagpadala sila ng regrets. At si Sister Marisa Viri, na presidente naman po ng Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines o CEAP. Bagaman hindi po sila nakadalo din tulad ni Attorney Arzaga ng ALFI, pero pwede pong magdagdag pa po tayo ng resource persons sa technical working group. At kung meron din pong specific suggestions po si Sen Rafi, we will invite them as well in the technical working group.
Siguro, Madam Chair, yung mula sa Catholic group, kasi silang merong strong opposition talaga.
All right, we'll do, Sen Rafi. Salamat po.
Thank you po, Madam
Sen
Chair.
Robin, baka may mga tanong kayo sa mga resource persons natin?
Maraming salamat po, ginang tagapangulo. Una po, gusto ko pong batiin lahat yung nagsalita sa kanya-kanyang opinion at nararamdaman natin ng demokrasya sa 4 na sulok ng Senado. At kanina po, narinig natin si Mr. Paul Rojas na napakaganda po nung sinabi niya, it's a human right. Karapatan ng bawat isa. Kung ano yung pangangailangan niya. Napakaganda po nun. Ano? At naintindihan din po natin, katulad po ng sinabi ni Idol Rafi, si Attorney Joel Arzaga, alam niyo po, nakakakiliti din sa puso na marinig na meron ding nag-o-oppose. Kasi hindi naman po pwede sa isang democratic na bansa, walang nag-oppose. Mahirap yon. At napakaganda po na nandiyan kayo at nagbabalanse. At ako din po, gusto ko lamang pong batiin yung napakagandang suot ni Miss Elizabeth Axioko. Napakaganda po. At yan po kaparehas nung sinusuot ko. Ano po ito? Mindanao din po ba ito? Mindanao. Opo, napakaganda po. Alam niyo po, ginang tagapangulo, ito pong usapin ng diborsyo. Na kanina binanggit ni Miss Helen paklarin yung history ng divorce. Ano? Nakalimutan niyo po yung sa Japanese time, meron pa ring divorce. No? Kahit nabanggit po ba nyo? Pasensya na po, medyo nabingi yata ako. Hindi po ito bago sa atin itong diborsyo. Napakainam po sana nating tanggapin na kung ilang taon natin hindi pinayagan ng diborsyo, pwede naman po natin sa dadating na halimbawa po, kung ito po yung ma-approvean, payagan naman natin. Kasi nasubukan na natin yung walang diborsyo, bakit hindi natin subukan yung meron namang diborsyo? Tingnan natin yung epekto. Kasi dapat ang komunidad, ang isang demokratikong komunidad, evolving. Huwag tayong maging stagnant. Kapag naging lumot tayo, wala tayong matututunan. Dapat patuloy ang pag-ikot natin. Halimbawa, darating na panahon, pag pinagbigyan natin itong panukala na ito at na-approvean, nakita natin na nangangailangan naman, napalakasin naman natin ng sinasabi po ninyo na yung kasal. Yun po yun ang demokrasya . Pwede nating, sabi nga ni Idol Rafi, may dumadating ang panahon na kailangan natin talagang emayendahan ang batas. At itong pagkakataon na ito, palagay ko po kasi alam niyo po, mga mahal naming resource speakers, Hindi naman po sa ipinagmamalaki ko. Pero ako po ay mismong nakaranas ng diborsyo. Ako po ay divorce sa aking ex-wife. At kami naman pong dalawa ng aking ex-wife ay maligaya. Siya po ay nakapag-asawa na at ako naman po ay nakapag-asawa na. At ganun din po yung aming mga anak ay maliligaya rin. Hindi po kami dumaan doon sa tinatawag nating asot pusa. Na batuhan dito, batuhan ng sira doon. Hindi po kami dumaan doon. Kasi kami po ay malayang nakapag-diborsyo sa ilalim ng Sharia Court. Yun lamang po yung akin na gustong i-share sa inyo na pwede naman ganong klase. Magkaroon tayo ng ganong paghihiwalay na alam nyo dito, nakakatakot kasi sa ating bansa. Masyadong machismo ba ang tawag doon? Kapag kalalaki, halimbawa, yung dalawang mag-asawa, yung lalaki, nagkahiwalay sila, yung lalaki, nagka-girlfriend, aba, bilib ang mga kapitbahay. Aba, ang galing nitong lalaking ito. Pero pag yung babae ang nag-boyfriend, ang tingin naman nung mga kapitbahay, eto naman babaeng ito, hindi po fair. Kailangan, ito pong diborsyo, ito ay proteksyon ng kababaihan. Para naman alam natin na ang kanilang karapatan, katulad po ng sinabi ni Mr. Paul Rojas, pangalagaan natin. Hindi po ito pagyurak sa kasal. Kailanman hindi po kami magiging instrumento na sirain ang isang kasal. Never. Hindi po kami nandito para maging preachers ng Bible o ng Quran. Hindi po kami nandito para ganun. Pero bilang mga mambabatas, katulad po ninyo, pinangahawakan din namin ang konstitusyon. At lahat po gagawin namin para patibayin ang kasal. Pero pag dumating po ang panahon na hinihingi na ng isang Pilipino, 2 Pilipino, 3 Pilipino na magkaroon siya ng kalayaan dun sa kasal, yan po ay karapatan na niya. Yun lamang po, maraming salamat po sa inyo. Mabuhay po, ginang tagapangulo.
Shukran, Sen Robin. So kung gayon po, Sen Robin, dear resource persons, I would like to thank all of the resource persons for sharing your recommendations and your stance on this issue. We look forward to working with you during the technical working group as we create the committee report and as we work towards the passage of this bill that will free Filipinos from abusive spouses and uphold the best interests of the child. Marami pong salamat. On behalf of the committee, this hearing is adjourned. Ingat po.